After over a month of delays due to supply chain issues, it sure was nice to finally get this batch of title casters finished and into the paint booth. Now I could finally see how they'd look under a red sunburst. After all, you never really know how a guitar is going to look until it has some color on it. After 5 days of spraying and sanding, I couldn't wait to get that last coat on so that I could hang them up to dry for the next 2 weeks, and I'd finally be able to ship them off to the new homes. Yes sir, I sure was riding high. But just as I was about to turn the last machine off, it hit me. Oh poopy. Where am I going to hang all these guitars? Up until this point, I've never sprayed more than 3 guitars in my workshop at any one time, meaning that I've never had to store that many guitars in my workshop during that all-important drying phase of a guitar's life. You see, nitrocellulose lacquer actually requires 2 additional weeks after you've sprayed the last coat before you can do the wet sand and buff on it. If you skip this step, what'll actually happen is you'll wet sand and buff the guitar too early, and you'll be feeling really good about how it looks, but then within a couple of weeks or months, that finish will actually have shrunk back quite a bit more, making it look like you never did anything to it in the first place, and it's not going to look super buffed. So it's important that we have a nice safe spot for them to just sit and be out of sight, out of mind while they dry. Now that these titles are selling so well, we're beginning to manufacture them in batches of 20, so the situation's going to get a lot worse real soon. Remember, this is just a converted 2-car garage that originally only measured 20 foot by 20 foot, which is 400 square foot, and that's before we even add the paint booth. If we count the space that the booth takes up, we're left with only a little more than 300 square foot of actual usable workspace. Add to that the fact that there's 3 of us in here now every single day, a CNC machine taking up space, along with all the other equipment and workbenches. It's really not that hard to imagine how cramped things have gotten around here. Up until now, we've hung these title casters from this really handy roller rail system that we got from Rockler a few months ago. But there's always a risk that these guitars are going to get banged into and damaged anytime that they're just hanging around our busy workshop floor, so we really need to come up with a better system for storing these guitars. Something that we recently did to free up some space in the workshop was to insulate and climate control my shed, so that we could use it to store all of our tone woods, title casters, and acoustics that are in progress. Because it's now temperature and humidity controlled, it also seems like it might be a great place to use for the drying stage of these builds. Okay, the main objective with this new hanging system that I'm imagining is that it needs to be very easy to operate, preferably with just one hand, because a lot of the times I'm holding 2 guitars at the same time. Now, the biggest and most important thing that it needs to be able to do is to allow the guitars to hang without swinging around. There's been many situations where I've got guitars stacked up side by side, and then something happens and then one starts to move and they turn into a giant wind chime. So what I'm thinking is that we can use my CNC machine to make a mounting system that hangs up here, where we can put up to 10 guitars at a time, using a special indexing system so that they lock into place and then don't move around. I can then take that same system and make a mounting place for up to 5 necks at a time, and I think it's going to work really well. It's really hard for me to explain, so maybe we'll head back into the shop so that I can better describe what I'm imagining in my head. Okay, so what I've been imagining is that we're going to make a system that's going to hang from the rafters in my shed, and I kind of want it to look cool, not just function really well. And so I'm picturing a system that's going to hang up there and look like the vertebrae from a back. So what I've done is actually gotten Fusion 360 and created a design, kind of sussed it out in there. And then what I did is made a 1/4 scale sample of it and printed it out on my 3D printer so that I could show you guys before we move over to the CNC machine. That way you can have a better idea of what the finished product's gonna look like. So I'll hold it up. I have to cover up my face so that my camera will focus on it. But yeah, this is the main system here that will hang the bodies of the guitar. The one that's going to hang the necks will look slightly different. But obviously this piece right here, this front piece, is going to be what will be 3/4 inch plywood. The back here is going to be 1/2 inch plywood. And you can see it will, oh boy, that it actually will fit inside the rafter right here. Gonna look super cool. Now, we've also got this, which is going to be the drying handle, the paint handle. I have to cover up my face so that you guys can see it. This part down here will be the part that locks into the bolt-on neck section of the guitar. Now, for the magic. So this part's hanging from the ceiling. Now watch this. It's gonna go like this. Click, and lock into place. Pretty straightforward, right? So now that we've made it on a 3D model and we've tested it out to see if it's going to work, I think we're ready to move to the CNC machine and actually cut it out. So let's go in there and you'll watch me cut it out. All right, the first thing we need to do is get our 2x4 foot plywood put on the CNC machine. And we do get a lot of questions about this machine. We recently did a video on it a couple of weeks ago, so we'll have a link to that up here so you guys can click on it if you want more information on just the machine. Another question that we get a lot is what kind of bits we use. And in this case, all of the cuts that you're gonna see in this video here are using the Amana Tools 3-flute 1/4 inch downcut bit. We actually recently switched over to these downcut bits after years of me using mostly upcut bits and compression bits, which are both up and downcut at the same time. I kind of held off on using downcut bits because it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me in my mind. I mean, why would I want my chips and sawdust to get blown down towards the product instead of up and away from it? But I actually ended up using a downcut bit for the first time because it's all I had left, and I was absolutely floored by how clean the cuts were. So now that's pretty much all that I use. The only disadvantage to it that I have found so far is that on the bottom of the piece, you do end up getting a little bit of fuzzies around the edge, just by the very nature of the way the bit works. But it's no big deal. I can just take the piece off of the CNC machine and then just lightly hand sand to get rid of that fuzziness. And in the end, I get a super crisp, clean cut on the piece. So now that we've cut out all of the front pieces for the body hanging system, we're going to do the back plates, which are just there to capture the handle inside of it. And those are out of 1/2 inch plywood, as well as all of the neck cradle systems. Now that we have all of the main body hanging pieces cut out, we can switch over to the actual handles, and I was actually able to fit 21 of them, which is kind of a random number, onto this 4 foot by 8 foot piece of plywood. So we have more than we need at this point, which is a good thing. As you can see, we're left with almost no waste. As I like to say, use all of the parts of the buffalo, especially right now with lumber prices being so high. So I actually ended up messing up one of these cuts because I crashed the machine into its end. It's a long story, but anyway, I ended up wasting one of my pieces of plywood and had to scramble and come up with another way to do it. So instead of using 1/2 inch plywood for my backer piece for the necks, I ended up having to use 3/4 inch and get a little bit more creative in the shape that it was in my original design. But it ended up doing the job, and I'm still super happy with it. All right, the only thing left to do now that they're all cut out is to do the final assembly on these things. So we need to stack all of them together, the front faces and the back faces of these bodies, and then we're just going to use a pin nailer and a little bit of glue to make them stick together. It's important that we don't get any glue squeeze out inside of the pocket area where the paint handle is actually going to go, because it'll gum it all up and make it so it doesn't slide very well. So just being careful not to do that. Just shooting in about 4 or 5 pin nails is more than enough to get the job done here. And we'll do that with all 10 of them. All right, now that those are made, the next thing we need to do is attach them to this rail system that I made, which is going to allow us to screw it into the rafters. With a little bit of glue, we're then going to insert it into the notch that's cut out to fit it, and then put a couple of brad nails inside of it to lock it all in place, making sure that everything's nice and square first.
And we're just gonna rinse and repeat this process 10 times until we get all of them on here. And then we'll flip it around and add the other rail so that we can actually stick it on the rafter. And remember, this is going to be the spot where we actually run our decking screw through and mount it. So let's get this thing out of the way, and the next thing we need to do is the same process but for the neck hangers this time. And this is that little kind of janky way that I had to do it because I messed up on my CNC machine. One thing you're going to see in this video is that right after I shot this, I realized that it's not going to actually fit in my shed if I do them 10 in a row. So I had to cut it in half and make it 5 and 5 instead of just one row of 10. You'll see that once we get back into the shed here in a second though. And as you can see, they look super cool. Kind of looks like something out of an alien movie or something like that. They're a lot bigger than I expected. I'm not too concerned about it. I just kind of wish that I maybe would have made them just a little bit smaller, but there's always next time. And now that that's done, let's head into the shed and get these things hung up and see how they look and work.
All right, now that these bad boys are finished, it's time to just hang them up. I went ahead and pre-drilled the sides with 5 holes on each side. That way, I'm pretty sure they're gonna be just fine. We're gonna screw these in with 1 3/4 inch deck screws, and I don't have a worry in the world about them not being able to hold the weight of the guitars. So let's run these screws in and see how it looks. All right, that's about as far as I can go that way, the way that they have the joist installed in this shed. They got these big metal clamps on there, and I can't go any further that way, but I think it's gonna be good, so I'm just gonna run my first screw in. That was easy. Let's go ahead and just knock the rest of them out real quick. Buddy, that ain't going anywhere. That's super nice. Whoa! That's super nicely installed. The nice thing is it doesn't stick out too far this way, so that it's not in the way of the door coming into the shed. Let me just go ahead and hang the next one on here, and I believe that I'll probably just slap the neck hangers on just on this side of it. I just love that it fits so well. I only just took measurements with my calipers before I made all this stuff inside my AutoCAD software, and it all just fits so nice. I certainly never count on it fitting this well. It's really cool seeing your the idea that starts off in your head turn into a finished product like this. That's nice. Yeah, I think what we'll do for the pièce de résistance, I think we'll put this here. You think that'll be all right? Yeah, I'm gonna give it a little gap. Feels good. I almost wish I would have put the neck mounting system on that side, but in the end, I think we're just fine. I think this is gonna be okay. Okay, there's 2 more screws I could put inside of this neck holder, but it doesn't need them. It's not going anywhere. As every man knows, once you smack it and say that ain't going anywhere, it's pretty much where you want it. So obviously we've got these in place. I'm really happy with how they look. The only thing that we have left to do, obviously, is attach some of our drying sticks and handles onto the guitars and on the necks, and then hang them up and see what we think about how it all came out. So I'm gonna go do that real fast, and we'll come back in here and hang this thing up. Okay, I went back in the shop and I put the paint handles on here that now work with these indexing system, and I'm super excited about how they fit, because honestly I hadn't even done any test fits up until this point. So as you can see, it's a lot shorter so that it sits closer to the roof, and let's just see how easy they go on here. Let's just use this one. Boom. That's awesome, man. Like, and the fact that it's got a little bit of movement to it, which I didn't want. If it was locked in super solid, then I wouldn't be able to do the one-handed operation. So a little bit of a compromise on the play that's in it. But man, just super good. It cannot come off of this thing. You actually have to pick up on it and go like that to get it off of there. So I mean, come on. Come on, that's what I want. So I'm gonna throw the rest of I have 6 of them to hang up here. So we'll do 3 and 3 and see how it looks. Dude, that's so good. That's so good. Yeah, I couldn't be happier with how that looks. It's not just about how it looks, obviously, but it's how it functions as well. All I've got in here is room for 10 electrics right now. And like I said, I've got my racks here to be able to hold 10 necks as well. I actually don't have any necks at this point that are ready for drying, so I don't have any to stick in these slots, but it's the exact same mounting system up here as is on there, so we're not going to have any issues with that. But obviously I'm going to need to make more of these, I think, and have them all throughout the shed for when we do this next batch of title casters, because we are doing a giant batch of 25 of them. They're all going to be available for purchase for you guys at home. This has just been a really fun little project for me. These are the sort of things that I love doing, taking just an idea in our head, turning them into a digital product, and then turning them into a finished product. I'm hot, and I'm ready to be done with this, though. Okay. Out of that heat, into the house, in the air conditioner, and it feels good. What do I think? The end product ended up being exactly how I envisioned it in my head, which is always super exciting. I think taking my time inside Fusion 360 with the design, as well as 3D printing it, helped me envision it a little bit better and made sure that it was going to work before I started making it all on the CNC machine. The only thing that I would have changed is probably making the size of this piece actually a little bit smaller, just to save a little bit of wood and just to make it so that it doesn't quite take up as much space in the shed. But other than that, I'm really happy with how absolutely everything else came out. We want to come up with a whole bunch of different hanging systems in the shop that utilize this single system right here, so that we can hang them up on that rockler rail system that we have in the main workshop, as well as the rail system that we have in our paint booth. So we're actually going to expand on this design to use for other things in the workshop, and so that'll be exciting. For those of you that are still with us in this video, if you're interested in making one of these for yourselves, what we're going to do is actually make them available on our website. So if you haven't been to our website, check it out. It's driftwoodguitars.com. And if you really want to get into it, it's driftwoodguitars.com/tonewoods, where we're actually going to have PDF plans available for you guys to make these for yourselves. If you guys happen to have a CNC machine, what we're going to do is actually make the, I guess it's DXF or STL files available to you guys for a very low rate of purchase, so that you guys can make these for yourselves and you can modify them to work for your needs as well. So we hope that you guys enjoyed this video, that you maybe got some entertainment out of it, that you got a little bit of information out of it, so that you guys can use this for yourselves. Make sure that you do like and subscribe. If you're interested in becoming a member of our channel, you can check the information out about that just below here where it says join. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good day.